Greetings adventurers, and welcome to the Loot Goblin Marketplace. Romance in tabletop games can be a tricky thing. When it's done right, it can add depth to the characters, raise the emotional stakes, and even create some of the most memorable moments a group will ever share. I don't personally enjoy long-running romance plots in my game, but if it does happen, the rule of thumb is that it has to be mutual. Honestly, everyone at the table should be on board, at least out of character, because I'm not about to dedicate time to make this romance subplot work within the story if every other member would rather be doing anything else. When romance gets forced, it can get uncomfortable fast. Lines between the game and real life can blur, and suddenly what was meant to be a fun roleplay turns into awkward or even downright inappropriate interactions. And then you'll probably end up in an RPG horror story, which I'll then be able to read, so you know what? Ignore my advice completely and be creepy. It's better for my channel views. Today's story is a prime example of how ignoring boundaries can derail an entire campaign. Today's treasure goes by the name Respect Goes Both Ways. Hey guys, I'm fairly disheartened that I can find myself back here with the post event. It's the story of Kat, not her real name, and it's likely to be the worst encounter I've yet to have. A few things I must note before the story begins. For a man, I have the tendency to be fairly feminine, both in mannerism and sometimes appearance. Makeup can do wonders, as well as fairly tall. Keep this in mind as it will be important for the story. Now for the cast, we have Ragu, the barbarian Goliath, Kat, the problem player, who's playing an elf bard, and the dungeon master. And our other two members, while having less interaction in the story, I feel are just as important as the rest of the party, who I will call Jack and Dean, an orc paladin and a human cleric, respectively. So it starts off with all of us joining a game with the Dungeon Master on Roll20 from a roleplay place I go to quite often for board games. Jack and Dean knew each other beforehand, while the rest of us were strangers. We might have had some correspondence before, but if so, I do not remember it. We all met in the Dungeon Master's home where we started writing down our characters. I have most of my characters written down on my laptop, as I do have a hobby of making characters and then playing them out to flesh them out more. This helps me out a lot in how I might play them later at other D&D games personality-wise. Not much other backstories are important to the plot except one little tidbit. My character is married, so session 1 plays out, then session 2 and 3. No major red flags yet, aside from a bit of staring from Kat and a fair amount of RP between our characters. The problem started and ended with the 4th session. She and I had gone out shopping for provisions. Well, I was shopping for a new weapon, as a nat 1 on an earlier Berserker Rage and Reckless Blow led to my maul snapping. So she joined me shopping and wanted to grab some provisions of her own. I had gotten myself a fine new two-handed warhammer. Big catch there. Kat then announced I move over to Ragu and wrap my arms with his. Now, I will mention that I actually don't usually mind romance in D&D games. Honestly, I think it can be fun in moderation. But again, Ragu is married. Happily so, in fact. So I said I pushed her off and showed my hand with the gold ring on it. She responds, "Why'd you push me off?" This caught me off guard, as I thought the ring was evidence enough. "He's married," I answered. I shit you not, these are the next words that came out of her mouth. "Oh, come on, he'd be much better off turning into a woman and being my girlfriend." I stared at her and then looked at the Dungeon Master and back at her. I was dumbfounded. "That's not gonna happen," was my response to it. "Why?" she chimed, seeming a little aggressive at my unwillingness. "He's a man, a very prideful man, a very happy husband and prideful man. There could be potions to make him into a woman, I'm sure of it." "Yeah, lady, I'm sure of it too, but what does that have to do with anything? This proud man's name is Ragu, not Prego. You can't turn him into a housewife that just carries your children because, you know, it would be great for you." Honestly, let's just ignore the backstory for a second. Who cares if he's married? No means no, lady, and that's a big ask. Just because the magic exists in-game doesn't mean he's gonna do it for you on a whim. I'm sorry, I know, I had to make the Prego joke. Let's just get back to the story. At this point, I'd clocked out from that weird conversation and just wanted to continue. The Dungeon Master must have noticed and turned the roleplay over to the group that was at the camp. Later on in that session, we were taking a long rest with Jack, taking the first night watch. During that time, Kat passed a note to the Dungeon Master. The Dungeon Master replied with, "Are you sure? Those are infamous words." She nodded, and the Dungeon Master asked me to make a perception check. I rolled an 18, and she explained how amidst my sleeping, I suddenly felt some soft weight upon me, which I immediately tossed off me. It turned out to be, you guessed it, Kat. Not just that, but she was nude. She said, "Oh, "Oh, big boy wants to play rough?" I did not reciprocate. Being who he was, he lifted her up under the armpits, walked out of his tent and over towards her tent, and just plopped her there, glaring. I felt like this was the most non-violent way my character could say no in this situation. I sat and joined the night watch from that moment through the night, just in case she wanted to try to pull that again. Honestly, again, very well handled in-game. Like I say in a lot of these videos though, when it comes to romance subplots, you can't solve an out-of-game problem with an in-game solution. This is now the second time they pulled a stunt in the same session, and as much as it sucks grinding the campaign to a halt, it might be time to be a little more direct about this, because obviously it's going to happen again, which we'll see shortly. Last but not least, the final straw. We were all just trucking through the brush of a forest with big and grumpy me in the front. Kat once more approached me with a "Please hold me, I'm scared." I say I push her off, she clings again. I push her off once more. I don't remember how many times she did it, but at least 5 times on that walk. I glared at her out of game, and after the last one I coldly asked the dungeon master if PvP combat is okay, and she said yes. So in character I said, "If you try to touch me one more time, I will not be as nice as I have been." This, in my opinion, was an obvious threat from an angry, tall, lawful evil Goliath barbarian. Man, that's quite a combo. She, for who knows why, did it again, so I punched her in the game. She responded thusly, "What the hell's your problem with me?" I shouted back, "What is your problem?" She squawked back with a, "You can't hit a woman, that's sexist." I was livid at this point. You say I did something wrong? Your character literally tried to sexually assault mine, and has been harassing me this entire session. Have you no respect for a no, nor the fact that he's married? You're disrespecting my sexuality, came out of her mouth. I believe that anyone can love anyone and be with anyone as long as it's above the age of consent and is not a violent one. So I barked back with, "And you're disrespecting my consent." I turned to the dungeon master and just said that Ragu clenched his bloody fist and left back in the direction we came from. I did not respond to anything Kat said from that moment on and until the session ended. The dungeon master sent a text stirring and asked if Ragu was following them. No came back from me. I had made up my mind. So after the session, we all went home. I texted the dungeon master back and said I was quitting the game. She was pretty respectful, but mentioned that apparently Kat had a crush on me. Well, yeah, obviously. So the final message between us went as follows. Then she went about it completely the wrong way. It might have happened if she came to me outside of the game. Heck, in the game, romance might have as well. But one should not have to pursue outside romance by doing it in game. This is a mindset I picked up from Den of the Drake, aided by the fact that I myself came into D&D the first time with the same "maybe I'll get a girlfriend over this" mentality. I think I did things pretty well, but I don't know if I could have done it better. I'd love to hear your guys' criticism and opinion. Thank you. TLDR, a girl suddenly starts flirting with my married character in a weird attempt to flirt with me. First of all, I'll start by saying Den of the Drake sounds like a really smart guy. We should really do a podcast together sometime. Even if you do join the hobby because you feel like there will be like-minded people and maybe you'll end up dating one of them, there's no guarantee that you'll click with someone at the table just because your character rolls really high. So thinking that in-game RP means that they have to date you in real life is honestly a little bit of wishful thinking. I pointed this out a little bit earlier in the story that he tried to solve this issue over and over again with in-game solutions, and even in that last section where he basically asks if PvP is okay and then just punches her and leaves, again, a little in-game combat wasn't going to solve this issue. They would somehow find a way to re-roll a new character that has an even bigger and more blatant crush on you, because in the end, as long as they are playing at that table, they are trying to date you. The character is just the medium that they're trying to use. That's why I personally like saying that you can't solve out-of-game problems with in-game solutions, because you have to remember that you are two people who have chosen to show up to play D&D. And yeah, while it's true that the Dungeon Master could have shut down the situation where she jumps you at camp, for example, eventually she would just try to make a move out-of-game. And I know you personally said she would have had a better shot if she did that out-of-game. You have to remember that she's now been flirting with you in character character for 3 sessions, and in her head, it's totally possible that she's much further along in this relationship than you are, so just always be careful about that. There is one more thing about this story I want to mention here at the end that has nothing to do with romance subplot. This might very well be the first group that I've ever heard about that met up on Roll20 and then decided to play their first session in person. Some of you guys are really brave when it comes to finding groups. I don't know if I would have done that personally, but I do much prefer playing in person, so you know what? If I become desperate enough to play a game in person, maybe I'll do it someday too. Honestly, this story kind of reminds me of another story I covered in the past. It was about a sorceress that called someone a bigot because they wouldn't date them, and I honestly can't believe that someone just came up to someone and said, hey, your character that's a male character needs to turn to a female so we can date, and somehow they expected that to go well and also get to date them in real life. I don't know, I'm still just blown away by that. If you liked the video, make sure to subscribe as it really helps the channel grow, and if you want to help support the channel further, you can become a member. I hope to see you all in the next video. Farewell for now. Hey guys, one last thing. I forgot to mention that I am opening a second channel that goes by the name Loot Goblin Nomicon. It's going to be linked in the description, and there's going to be a couple videos out right now that you can watch. This is a channel where I'm going to cover all things fantasy tropes. I'm going to be talking about your favorite races, your favorite classes, probably even your favorite monsters. I love talking all things fantasy, and this is a chance to just cover stuff that's outside the context of RPG horror stories. Because let's be honest, as fun as these stories are, sometimes you want something a little bit more fun and goofy instead of RPG horrors and literal shit shows. So make sure to check that out, because if it does well, I'm going to try to make it a weekly occurrence and then have one video on the main channel and then one video on that second channel. So make sure to check that out too. Alright guys, see ya.